Hello there, FloridaMan40k listeners. We're back, and better than ever. This is Jimmy Prescott. Here with us today, we have the regulars. John, in the know, because he's played ninth for a bit already, Lennon.
Hey, hello. Howdy.
Also Dan, doesn't give a shit at all, Smith.
Yep, that's me.
And our special guest here, specifically for the 9th edition conversation, Will, the Tau Pow Taylor.
Hey guys, I'm back.
We have had the lovely Mr. Taylor join us before. I think last had you on right around the time that the Greater Good supplement came out, and I just wasn't willing to talk about James Circle because I was so depressed. So we talked about Tau instead. Welcome back.
Thank you. I'm glad to be back.
We're always happy to have you. Will is a veteran, founding member of Brohammer, so he has certainly been around us a while. We always enjoy playing with him, seeing him at events. I think Dan and Will have gone to ATC together a couple of times. And you've been playing for quite a few editions. Also, you've been paying attention to some of the 9 fleets, and we thought it'd be fun to get another guest on the episode.
Yeah, part of that, too, is because Jimmy and I have just been playing video games through the Rona. Like, we haven't paid any attention except, like, yeah, we know stuff's getting released, and that's as far as we've gone. So expect Jimmy and I to sound like idiots, and Will and Lennon to try to, like, hold our hands and walk us through all this stuff.
What's
Which is
new?
good, because that means you guys will get a lot of information out of it.
Yeah, I feel like that's always my role, where I'm just like, what is 40k, guys? Like, and then you guys have to explain it, and then that's the show.
All right, well, we'll see if we can live up to that again this time around. All right, so let's just kind of kick it off. So I think what we're going to be doing this episode, just to kind of put where we are right now, we're recording this on a Tuesday. At this time, we do not have the new points for 9th edition. We do not have the chapter-approved Warhammer Tournament Pack missions yet, but we do have the basic core rules. We do have the generic rulebook missions, and we also have the narrative play guides. But I think we can probably not talk about the narrative play this time around. We'll save that for a later episode in 5 years.
You're not excited about Crusade?
I actually am excited about Crusade, but I haven't read it yet. So, nah. I'm not going to squint through leaks and the profanity that was scrawled across them, just so I can read the narrative rules when I know that I'm not playing a narrative game in the next month. So I will read those rules, and I will get excited for Crusade, and I'm going to name every single Space Marine in my army by rolling 2d6 on a name generator. But until that point, we'll postpone that Crusade talk for later.
No.
All right, so I think how we wanted to approach this episode really was just talking about kind of just hot taking everything that's changed. I've been lucky enough to play a couple of games so far of the new edition. I've played against Mr. Nick Nanavati and Mark Perry up here at the Art of War Trap House. So I've gotten some good practice in. We're playing with all of the rules that we know. And certainly there are limits to that, but I'm still pretty happy with what we've been able to learn so far. And I'm sure we'll continue to get some fresh, steamy, hot takes for you in the future.
Yeah, a part of
So
I will say what a part of the research that I've been doing has been just reading the leaks, obviously, but also watching a bunch of YouTube videos and, of course, the Art of War stream. I got to catch you play Nick Nanavati with your Bogard, and that was an excellent learning source.
yeah. There's definitely a couple of good resources out there. I think Tabletop Titans, Tabletop Tactics, their initials confuse me every time. Couple of different sources that put out some quality content, so check all of this out. Every single thing, watch it all. All right, you ready to kick it off?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. So we're literally going to just go phase by phase in the order that it appears in the rulebook, and we're just going to kind of talk about some of the major changes, and then kind of just hot take what we think it's going to mean. So we're probably just going to, rattle off a couple of changes, and then we'll just talk about how it's going to affect our armies, what armies we think are going to profit, which are going to suffer, why Eldar are still the worst, all of that.
Sounds good, man.
Give the people what they want.
Right.
All right, so movement phase.
Hold on now. You're forgetting a very critical
Oh, of course,
phase
there
that
is a whole ass other phase, a command phase.
You got to untap and follow through on your upkeep. Come on, guys.
Yeah, he knows what's up. Command phase more or less works like as Dan just referenced, magic in the upkeep phase.
It's when you do all the bullshit that that was the first time I've ever cussed on the pod. Anyways, I'm sure it is. Go back and listen. I specifically do not cuss, and ass isn't a cuss word. Anyways, I like this change because generally, if you're a competitive player, you kind of do this type of thing anyway, where at the beginning of the turn, you pause, you take account of everything. Now it's got a name, and there's actions that happen in that phase, and that's all I know, so I'm going to stop talking now, but I like it.
Get away, Lennon.
All right, so command phase, the universal part that we're all going to see is that everyone gains a command point in their own command phase. So pretty simple. We like it. We love it. That's how they're dealing with DP regen. So this is in addition to anything you regen with something like a Grand Strategist, Crown Spell, all of that crap. But you do gain 1 command point if you're Battle Forged. I love how they put this, like, if you're Battle Forged, but, like, everything has to be Battle Forged anyway, so we kind of ignore that. You get a command point. They've also indicated that, like, special abilities and some other stuff will also happen in the command phase. Right now, that's relatively limited. What we do know, in the Indomitus box, we've seen that. That's been leaked as well, or previewed by GW. The Chaplain Chance happens in your command phase. Currently, it happens in the beginning of the battle round. You can pretty safely assume that they are going to FAQ the existing Chaplain Dark Apostle stuff. So just think of all of those obscure beginning of the round abilities. Kind of expect that command phase is now going to be when that stuff happens. So it's an entire phase. It's a little harder to skip over. Trust me, for the first month, we are still going to skip over it. But we are going to learn the hard way, or our opponents are going to be generous to us. And we will kind of get that down pat pretty quickly, I hope. But yeah, just, chant your chants, gain a command point. Tracking command points is going to be interesting. I'm thinking of, I'm going to, have, a little, side piece, made out of wood where I just, flip over every turn's command point to, make sure that I remember it. Because, if it gets to, my shooting phase, I'm like, ooh, did I gain a command point? Was I at 3 or 4? I know I'm at 4 now. Was I at 4 before? My opponent's like, I don't know. Then you kind of missed it. So that might take a minute, but we'll get there.
I would say that,
we're not too much in the command phase. Other than that, it's there.
Yeah, I would say that for anybody who's ever played Magic the Gathering, just once again a reference to that game, command phase is going to be really easy to. I know it's going to be really easy to remember, just because it's exactly like an upkeep. You basically stop, check everything that goes on in the command phase, and then move forward. So in doing that, you ensure that you gain your CP. And one other thing from Magic that you can get are those little life counter spin down dice that are all from 1 to 20 on a organized way. That's how I track my command points anyway. So you just bump that up by 1. Then so that way you've gotten your command point for the turn. And then obviously do your chaplain chance or whatever else is going to be in the command phase. Command phase is also useful, or harder to forget because you score your progressive mission points in it as well. A lot of the missions have you gain your victory points during the command phase.
Yeah, and if you are worried specifically about the command point thing, after you click your dial, what I would do is on ITC score sheets forever we've had the 6 turns, and you put your points in there. Just put a little check mark next to the turn. Did I get my command point? Check. Just do a little written check for yourself. That's what I did. In the psychic phase, if I've got 1,000,000 powers, I have a little cheat sheet, and then just check it off every time you have what you're looking for that turn. So it's just another thing to just practice and train yourself on. So that way, like Lennon was saying, you don't get to the shooting phase and say, well, did I have this or did I not? Did I do that? Did I not? Look at the sheet. The check mark is there. I did. No check mark. You didn't. That's what I would recommend in addition. But yeah, that's all from me. I'll shut up again.
That definitely sounds like a pretty. Oh, you're good.
Yeah.
I think that's about it for the command phase. Yeah, there's going to be some mission stuff as well. I'm sure we'll talk about when we get to that point. Command phase pretty simple, kind of like a placeholder. Like, yep, here's a little bit of stuff to do, and there will definitely be more coming soon. I imagine that day one FAQs will be a big deal. Like, I'm thinking like stuff like Montcock Kion. Do those happen right now, like just at the beginning of the movement phase?
The movement phase, yeah. So
yeah.
I'm assuming the exact same thing.
So I'm sure we'll get that pretty soon. Literally day one with any luck. But speaking of the movement phase, we're going to get back to that now.
Yes.
Quite a bit has changed. The movement phase might have the most changes, if I'm being honest.
Okay.
We'll just start with the basic stuff. Coherency has changed for 6+ unit models, 6+ model units. So there's kind of been a great incentive to not run hordes, and we'll talk about that more with Black in the shooting phase. But big changes to the movement phase. I would say the biggest one is probably the fallback and coherency rules. Like those are the biggest two. I might actually say that coherency is the biggest single one. So now, if you're out of coherency, then you're going to literally take casualties at the end of the turn during morale until you're back in coherency.
Yeah, that's something.
And then the second part.
Sorry, I want to really dive in on that real fast because there's like strategic advantage and disadvantage to that.
Yeah.
And so like the one obvious advantage I see is with Orc Boys. If you just have little like dumbbells on the end, with a dude in the middle, you can always get yourself down to under 15 models or under 50% for Endless Green Tide. And because you already are like you just assumed if I lose one model here, I'm going down to 14 and then I'm going to use Endless Green Tide. Any additional resources they put into that unit are going to be a waste because you're planning on it anyway. You're literally going to pull a model and say, great, I pull all these guys up, I Endless Green Tide to where I want to be. So that's just one of the positives I've seen, but like, don't think of it as, oh no, now I have to do this one thing forever. It's just another strategic element with pros and cons. So, and the obvious one I saw was for Orc Boys.
Yeah, so I'm going to get back real quick to just define a coherency. There's now two ways to be out of coherency. The one we know and love from 8th edition, which is like you've literally pulled casualties from the middle of the unit. You have two ends now. They're not joined in the middle. You're out of coherency. Okay, great. That's the same as before. But if you have a 6+ model unit, you now have to be within 2 inches of 2 models for every model in the unit. So that's a really big change. It's a lot easier for a big unit to get pulled out of coherency, kind of how Smith mentioned. If you just do a line with little triangles on the end, you're in coherency, but as soon as you take 1 or 2 casualties, you are very quickly out of coherency. If you're trying to not lose casualties to this, and pros and cons to both, there's going to be really 2 ways to do it. It's just zipper your units, and they're not going to be as long. But if you just go kind of back and forth, just like literally just 2 ranks that are kind of off shifted from each other a little bit, it'll just be back, forth, back, forth, back, forth. You just pull from one or the other end, and it'll just keep you in the same line. Like you're going to be in 2-inch coherency the entire time. No problem at all. You can still stretch out and mostly align and cover a lot of ground. So I think that's going to be very useful. What's the practical implications of this are that as soon as you get back into coherency by being a 5 model unit, so either you get back into coherency where everyone is down to being within 2 inches of 2 other models and you're above 6 persons, or you get down to a 5 model unit and then everyone's within 2 inches of 1. So like if you did that daisy chain, just to kind of break it down, we're going to go through the phases here, unfortunately. You've got that big line of Orc Boys, and you've got a little capstone on each end that's kind of a ball, so that your entire unit's in coherency. You take 5 casualties, you're a 25 boy unit, and you're out of coherency. You don't do anything immediately. Your opponent shoots, charges, fights. You take a morale check, you roll it, you remove casualties. Once you're done with that, you then look and see if you're in coherency. You're not, okay. You now pull yourself down to coherency, which would be a 5 boy unit. then you can Unstoppable Green Tide, whatever. So your opponent can kill 3 boys, and they can look at that and say, all right, I know now that Smith is going to lose 20 boys in morale. Do I care to shoot at the unit? There's going to be instances like with Guardsmen where the answer is they actually do still need to kill it. So like Guardsmen, they can string out like that, and it's not a big problem at all. Because worst case scenario, they kill 1 Guardsman, you pull 4 to morale. No one cares about losing 16 points of Guardsmen. And like it's not a big deal. And then you still leave the OBSEC ones on the objective where they're being annoying till the end. It's like Guardsmen can very easily be in a precarious position because they're either killing the Guardsmen or they're not. You're not diminishing the value of the Guardsmen by killing half of them. Orc boys, however, are a different situation. Hormagaunt mob, Gene Stealers. If you have 20 Kraken Gene Stealers and you kill 2, and then you look at it and you say, well, guaranteed 13 more are going to die because they were bad at coherency placement, you can ignore that because you just don't care about 5 Gene Stealers. Orc boys, they have that little wrinkle of Unstoppable Green Tide. But if you look at your opponent's command points and you say, oh, they have 1 command point left, they're going to gain 1 at the beginning of their turn, that's going to be 2 command points, it's a 3 CP stratagem, done, they're not getting it.
Yeah.
That's easy.
Oh, there you go.
So it's going to be tricky. Using coherency to your own advantage to specifically break your units, I think is mostly going to be used on useless objective securing stuff, where like you can do that on a Guardsman squad. So like you move them up in a very thin chain with just the bare minimum coherency. And if they kill 1, you just collapse the entire unit down to a portable 5-man, and that you just leave the 5 on the objective. But also like if they wrap you and they kill 1 model, you can literally pull 8 more by just removing from the middle first, and then, oh, look, I'm still out of coherency, and you pull until there's literally 1 model left.
It's actually my favorite part about the new coherency rules as a Tau player. Like, that's legitimately the best thing. Oh, no, I'm not I guess I can't be wrapped now.
Yeah.
Try pointing out articles.
I think on like first glance, you see the coherency rules, and you're like, man, that's a freaking nerf. There's more tactical benefits to it, in my opinion, as long as you see your models as expendable, which it's 40k. Every model is expendable, or you're doing it wrong, or you're knights. Like, those are the only options.
We'll say,
nerf.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, like, for the most part, like the intention was to make people have to clump their hordes together instead of stringing them out and sharing multiple objectives with just 1 unit. But, they make these rules in a vacuum and then they release them out in the wild, and we immediately think, oh, how can I exploit this? And that's one way to do it.
We certainly will be exploiting it, but I still think that the nerf to hordes is real. But also,
absolutely. But I hate hordes, so I don't care about that.
You talking about how much he loves orcs.
I love orcs, but hate hordes. It makes no sense.
Right. I'm a horde player by nature, and I think hordes should literally just die. So I'm okay with that because like it will speed up the game, and I enjoy other playstyles as well. But I'm a traditional horde player, so a little part of me is sad, but I'll move on and I'll dry my tears with my Space Marines and their new codex that's probably going to come out in a month.
Right on.
So I think I'll be fine.
I did want to say about the movement phase, besides coherency, because the check coherency thing is all the way at the end of the phases. Movement phase is relatively unchanged. There is one thing that I thought was interesting as far as there's 4 different movements that you can do: normal move, advance, remain stationary, or fall back. And the fallback one, I think it's slightly different. It says that when you fall back, you can move within engagement range of enemy models so long as you fall all the way back. So that means, if I'm reading this correctly, if you are if your opponent is trying to wrap you but are using 2 units to pincer your guys in, and there's a small gap between the 2, even if you weren't engaged with one of the units, you can walk within engagement range of that unit all the way back.
Yeah, that is true. Like, you used to be able to tag something and then put other units that weren't in combat around it. I've done that before. I've done that with vultures, where I would put my vultures on the other side of like a knight, and then I would just tag it with 1 model.
Yeah,
you can't move within an inch of anyone else, so I guess you're just staying still.
Right.
They-
So this
they
is a
spec-
change to that.
They specifically knew the crap Lenin was pulling and put in literature about aircraft not being able to move block.
Yeah, they did
That too.
And yeah, so Lenin, that rule is specifically your fault.
You're welcome. Oh my
Notice that.
God. Take credit, I guess.
Right. And then, did we want to talk about fly during the movement phase, or do we want to like more into fly for the psychic shooting assault phase?
I would say we can point that out now. Basically, if I understand right, fly is the same except you cannot fall back and shoot. Like you can, you only fall back, but because the shooting is different now too when you're in combat.
You also can't fall back and do psychic powers.
So basically, falling back sucks, and you need a really specific fallback and act rule to fall back and do anything. So like White Scars can still fall back and charge, Ultramarines can still fall back and shoot, but as a general rule, if you're falling back from combat, you're not doing diddly squat unless you've got a specific rule or stratagem. There's no more general, well, I don't care if you touch me. Falling back sucks.
Falling back does suck.
So that's going to be good.
Right. There's also a few other things in the movement phase for reinforcements. I mean, reinforcements are set up about the same way. They say that it's at the end of the movement phase, and they can't do anything once they've ended or can't come in from the sides. There's a few things about.
You cut out just a second there, Will.
I'm sorry. What did you not hear?
Just repeat the whole thing.
Did you? Oh, okay. Sorry. There are a few other things in the movement phase, like the reinforcements. It's just end of phase. They come in. They can't move. They can't do anything else as far as movement goes when they come in. Then they also cover like how transports work, how disembarking works. Like disembarking now, when you get out, you have to be wholly within 3 inches of the transport. You can't just be within 3. So you can't like put the ass end of your base at the furthest point from the transport to get extra movement. You have to be within 3 inches.
Yes, yeah, a lot of good stuff there. A lot of just clarifying things. I guess we should talk about 2 of the new stratagems that were introduced. So previously we had 3 general stratagems. The auto pass morale, CP reroll, and the combat interrupt. So 2 new ones that are specifically relevant here. I guess 3 new ones actually. One is Desperate Breakout. It's 2 command points. Basically, you can fall back through enemy models. So if you get tri-pointed, you have a 2 command point, save yourself from your own stupidity, and you get to fall back from combat. However, when they specifically call this out, like if you fall back with Desperate Breakout with this stratagem, you cannot act in any way, even if you have an ability that would normally let you do so. So if White Scars can fall back and charge, if you tag White Scars, they fall back and charge. If you tri-point White Scars, they fall back, and then they cannot charge because they use Desperate Breakout to do it. Also, you roll a dice for every model in the unit, and on a 1 they die. So like if you get tri-pointed, you're spending 2 command points, and you're taking some casualties, and you are completely useless as far as actions go. On the turn, you fall back. So good for you, you fell back, but I think this just prevents the game from getting literally ended by a tri-point. Like I'm sure, I'm sure, Will, you've seen oh no, the Gene Stealer Cult player managed to wrap that one guy that I didn't think they could get to, and oh no, the Aberrants consolidated into it. The game's over.
You've literally done that to me.
That's why I called
2 or 3
you out.
times. Yeah, exactly. So I mean,
want you to relive that.
Yeah, if we were living in 8th edition land and I had access to the stratagem, you best believe I would be using it all the time. But wrapping is a bit harder now. But that is like oh man, I really messed up. This is my get out of jail free card.
Yeah. And wrapping is a little bit harder because of coherency rules. Big units still having to stay within 2 inches of multiple friends means it's harder for them to wrap. You're less spread out. Wrapping is also less impactful because tagging is more impactful. It's against Tau, it was a big deal because you couldn't just tag crisis suits and commanders and be safe. Right now, I could, yes, wrap a Fire Warrior, maybe wrap 2 different squads that you can't Desperate Breakout, because I'm still going to be wrapping one of them. And all right, all well and dandy, but like I could also just tag the commanders in the crisis suit unit, and then if you fall back, you're not doing anything, and I'm not getting shot anyway. That has the same effect. So wrapping is less important, but there are still situations where you need it. For example, their guns are all the frickin' way in the back. Like if they have like 12 inches of solid drones in between you and the Riptides, and you're not going to be able to tag them, then yes, it is important to it is important to get a wrap there. But yeah, you can take 2 hostages and only one can fall back with Desperate Breakout. It's useful.
It's useful.
The second one is it's not specifically a movement phase, but it's kind of transport tied. And since we were just talking about transports, I figured I'd bring it in now.
Yeah.
Whenever you lose a transport, 2 command points to emergency disembark. Normally you get out 3 inches. Now you get out 6 inches.
And it's just to prevent people from standing an inch away from one of your transports, blowing it up, and then having all the guys immediately die when they get out. So
also,
I was going to say, I mean, it's just to prevent the feel bads. I mean, once again, this is another stratagem that helps kind of correct the ship when you make a big mistake like that. It does punish you because there are detriments to using the stratagem.
Yeah. And again, and you can't always use a stratagem, and they can be vected, and you can just run out of command points, and they can wrap you with 6 inches, if they're really feeling motivated about it.
Right.
So I think it's good because it just makes it harder to get those feel bad scenarios without just being boring and saying, no, you can't do that.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Now it's all right, is it worth 2 command points to save Guardsman and a Chimera? Probably not, right? And then your opponent gets reward. Is it worth the Intercessors? Maybe it's worth saving the Intercessors, but then you're like, oh man, but then I'm going to be down to 1 command point. I really wanted 3 command points to fight twice with my Smash Captain. Well, now you got to choose, Just making, they're giving us more command points, they're giving us more opportunities to use them. Obviously, almost everyone, rest in peace, Sisters and Eldar, got more stratagems in Psychic Awakening. So, everyone has more opportunities to use them. So, very good direction. I think they removed a lot of that makes no sense by giving workarounds rather than just removing it. So, a good player will still be able to pull it off because they wrap and explode 2 transports. They do it so that you spend command points. They vect it. They wrap you 6 inches. You can still do it it's just going to take a little more effort. And the first time you're caught off guard because you just didn't realize that was a concept. How many times have you had to explain a tri-point to a new player round 1 of a GT and you're just like, oh buddy, I'm so sorry.
Luckily, I have never had to.
Round 1 every tournament I go to. So,
sure. I would like to also say that the stratagem is more dangerous to the guys that are getting out as well. I do believe 1 or more might die on 1s or 2s. Yeah, I mean, so if you're wrapping let's use Custodes in this example. If they're in some sort of transport and they're getting out, 1 or 2, an Orion or something. I don't know. They've got 3 wounds a dude, and every 1 and 2 is gonna hurt, even if you're not rolling that many dice. But I mean, it's cool. It's a cool little neat stratagem. What's the last one for the movement phase?
This one is worthless. You're never going to use it. It's the punish people for falling back.
Yeah.
So when they fall back from engagement range, you roll a dice for every model in engagement range, which is going to be covered in melee, but basically is close to them. And on a 1, they take a mortal wound. So if you have 30 boys attacking a Space Marine captain and they wrap him, he is fly, so he just falls back. But you have 10 models in engagement range. You roll 10 dice. For every 1 you roll, captain takes a mortal wound.
For every 6, I thought.
It might be 6. 1 out
Either
of 6.
Either way, it's the same.
Yeah. I think it actually is a 6 now that you say that. You get the point, though. Okay, that's cool. When it comes up, I'll be grateful it's there. Is that going to come up twice in the same month? I would be shocked.
I doubt it.
Highly doubt it. But you know what? It's free. I don't have to use it. No complaints. I think that's
it. I mean, they have things about aircraft, but
yeah,
aircraft fundamentally don't change.
They just added the 27 different aircraft changes all got put in the book.
We can fly off the table, but we can cover aircraft later. Like aircraft aren't really. I don't think we're going to be seeing too much of aircraft, to be honest with you.
We actually let us talk about it now. Actually,
Okay,
basically,
sure.
if aircraft fly off the board, then they can just fly back later, so they don't die. If they can't make their move, they don't just explode. They leave and they're gone for the turn, and then they immediately come back to the next turn from reserves, and they arrive 9 inches away from something.
Yeah, they don't fly back on the table like how they did in 6th and 7th. They
don't make the
deep
literal
strike.
move. Basically, deep strike.
Yeah, which I think is a weird change.
I mean, it's fundamentally the same thing because,
yeah,
if you were outflanking off the board, an aircraft moves so fast, it literally might as fly on from a board edge. Might as well be deep strike with moving 70 inches on a damn hemlock.
The question, though, is if you're being placed, that means you don't fly over enemy units for things like strafing runs, bombs, whatever, right?
Exactly. That's where my brain is, because I'm thinking about the Sunshark bomber. I want it to fly from a table edge over something to continue bombing. In this instance, you can bomb something, fly off the table, and then you deep strike later on, and then you're exposed. So you may only get one bombing run. I'm of the same mindset, Dan.
That's also the good thing, though, again, because you are so fast, like you could just drop them in a corner as far away from the enemy guns as possible and probably live anyway. But yeah, it staggers you can't turn 1 strafing run bomb something off the table and then turn 2 bomb another unit. It's going to stagger you turn 1, turn 3, turn 2, turn 4. So you can't get a bomb every single turn, but your flyers are inherently more protected. So I hope it's enough of a change to let bombers be a little more viable and let things that like the hemlocks and whatever that we were seeing, maybe I don't want to see those as much, but I do like the idea of bombers because you are investing a lot of points for something that you're only going to use every other turn and only get a couple mortal wounds out of. But at the same time, a key bombing run could be huge, as you and I saw in that one Grey Knights Tau game.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And then if that game were played today, they would have flown off the table and come back and done it again.
Exactly.
Or you would have shot at them. So, yeah, that I mean, that is something to consider. You're definitely going to see more Crimson Hunters. They've not gone in. Anyways,
I can hope.
That's flyers, man. Flyers haven't changed, really.
That's about it. Flyers haven't changed much. Just you won't auto crash them, but then a lot of the mechanics just throughout the game have been kind of changed to say except for flyers. So you can move over flyers. You can end within an inch of flyers. That doesn't mean you get to swing on them unless you can fly. But if you fly, you can't end within an inch of them. So ground pounding orcs can literally just move and base an Eldar flyer, and it doesn't matter. The orcs still act as normal. The Eldar flyer still acts as normal. No problem. So there's just less interaction. Flyers are more, I am a fast, mobile, unchargeable gunboat, and the less, surprise, I'm a screen.
Question real fast. If I finish within an inch, are you engaged for any purpose at all? Obviously, I'm thinking of my mirror shenanigans.
-0, none.
So I can't
do that.
Can't crash and burn you unless I've engaged you with someone with fly, and I have an ability that prevents you from falling.
You can't crash and burn at all. They'll just leave the table.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, he just goes. That you literally can't force them to nosedive into the ground. Like they just okay, well I can't do anything. I guess I'm gonna leave.
Don't fall back from combat. They just move. So no mirror. There's no. You don't fall back from them. They don't fall back from you. They just do their thing.
Gotcha. That was my follow-up question. So there is no fallback for flyers. Got it.
You don't fall back from them. They don't fall back from you. Flyers just are above most of the rules now, without being above it when it's convenient for them and on it when it's inconvenient for you. They're actually above it now.
Gotcha. So literally, like you said, they just fly around until they die. The end. Yeah, that's the whole discussion.
Useful, but that's pretty much what they do. They no longer, all of the mission secondaries will say, have a unit except a flyer in your opponent's deployment zone. Have a unit except a flyer in every table quarter. They are really just there to fly around, do what is on their profile, and not much else.
Gotcha.
That's good.
Which is fine, because flyers dealing damage is fine. especially from what I've been kind of reading and understanding, is the game is less about kill power and more about being in the right place, holding the right objective or table edge or whatever. So like, it's okay to have flyers with high kill power because that's all they contribute. And kill power isn't, it's probably the third or fourth most important thing in writing a list now.
Yeah, definitely. I'd say third, but it's definitely not the only thing. Let's do one final thing now that we're at the end of the movement phase. Let's talk about the end of the movement phase and reserves. Reserves changed in a couple very important ways, but other than that is kind of what you expect. So this one for you, Dan, in case you weren't aware, the Spore Mine trick no longer works.
Good.
So there's two things that they have said. One is that it's as you would expect. You can't come in turn 1. You can come in turn 2 or 3. You arrive 9 inches away unless something specifically says otherwise. And turn 4, you die. Or at the end of turn 3, you die. I think they specifically call out if you leave the battlefield to go in reserve for any reason, you have to come in the next turn. So there were a couple of the more poorly worded ones where it was like, well, technically I have to leave, but I don't have to come back immediately. So I'll just come in on turn 5 and land on an objective after you're done shooting. Sucked. No one liked that. So that's gone. But important things is, one, there's a new stratagem that lets you outflank units based on their power level. So every command point you spend basically gets you... So if you spend 1 command point, you can outflank 1 to 9 power level. So, for example, you spend the 1 command point, it's not outflank 1 unit worth up to 9. It's outflank up to 9 worth of units. So if you have, I'm going to make up some numbers here. If you have an intercessor squad that's 5 power level and a tactical squad that's 4 power level, 1 command point lets you outflank both of those units. Yeah. If you have a Plague Marine squad that's 15 power level and a cultist squad that's 3 power level, that totals 18. 2 command points lets you outflank up to 19 power level. You outflank both of those units, or 7 different power level 2 units, whatever you want to do there.
Right. And
so anything can go in reserve. By turn 1, it arrives by outflanking on one of the 2 edges, like not either player's deployment zone. They come in within 6 of an edge, not in your opponent's deployment zone. Or turn 3, they arrive from any table edge.
For your opponent's table edge.
On turn 3, I thought you could do your opponent's table edge.
So the caveats are turn 2, you outflank on the sides or your battlefield edge. You still can't outflank on your opponent's like battlefield edge. Is I guess how they're referencing the 2 sides, not the long side.
Oh yeah. Not on their edge, but you could be in their deployment zone.
Exactly. And then turn 3 is negate the edge part, but you can't come off of their owning board edge. So you can on turn 3 walk in their deployment zone, but on the sides, not from the main line.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. And there is one more rule in addition to that. You can, if you deploy within 1 inch of your own table edge, your own deployment edge, not your zone, your edge, you can arrive within 9 inches of enemy models.
So they can't, block you out. You can't do that goofy little Kroot trick. I'm sure plenty of people have seen the picture of a guy outflanking his entire White Scars army, and so a dude put like 60 Kroot across his deployment edge, so that's why he can't walk on.
And
same
could
concept.
Even put you in close combat, and if so, it counts as having charged.
And they clearly can't fire Overwatch for it either. Like, it's pretty nifty.
There's no Overwatch because there's no charge declared. They just count as having charged.
Yeah,
so
that's pretty cool.
Really, really cool. Really.
So
because again, you run into the feel bads of like, I'm going to deep strike my Raven Guard Centurions against the Tyranid army. What could go wrong? Turn 1, the entire board is full of bodies, and you realize you've made a horrible mistake.
Yep.
18 models die in reserve. I know I did that to Daniel at least once with
exactly once.
Shooting 4 mines.
It was exactly once.
Exactly once. So once was enough.
Yeah, I learned my lesson, and you got to brag about it for years.
I'm not done. To be clear, I'm not done.
I don't think it's
Um,
ever going to go away.
Literally never. But
So,
like that's
just like servo skulls, Will.
like the service calls. Well, that's very useful. I'm not going to derail too much. Sorry. Most of it is you get to all the effective screening without just ending the game. It's like if I make your reserves arrive, super far back, that's good.
Yeah.
But like I'm not just killing them. It feels bad.
Are there any restrictions on what units you can outflank? Because like Magnus just getting eliminated turn 1 was the main reason I didn't bring Magnus.
No, you can do Magnus. Just keep in mind that he's power level like 25 or some crap. So like you're spending 3 command points to reserve Magnus.
The only limit is the amount of command points you've got.
Yeah.
And I don't know if there might be some match play rules where you can only reserve up to a certain point, but in the main rule book they don't have anything that says you can't strike your entire army.
Yeah. Like if you've got the command points, go right ahead. Just, tabling rules I think are still there where like if you're out of models, that's not good. And also the way primary scoring works, you maybe don't want to do that. But I think you can now. No, I haven't seen anything that says you have to deploy half your army. Maybe more thorough reading when we have the actual book in hand will reveal that. Right now, let's just say it's not a good idea to do it anyways, so we're probably not going to. But if you want to Mac or a Knight Castellan, you can spend all those command points and do it.
And it might be worth it. Like if your whole army is designed around the Castellan and your opponent deploys 3 Shadow Swords, you can be like, all right, I get to shoot first now, thanks. Or you get into that. And they have 3 of them. They can't null deploy all of them realistically. So like it makes it skew armies. If you have that one big answer and your opponent is skewed, you're like, great, I'm going to take the threat I know you want to remove. I'm just going to take it off the table and it's going to come on and like just crush you. So I like that a lot.
With uncertain for turns, I think this is a very good change because you're going to get to use that unit at least once. And I agree, it does disincentivize skew lists.
Just got a skew list. So that should be the movement phase. Let's move on to the next one.
Yeah. First, I want to get Jimmy's input on the movement phase.
Yeah, Jimmy, what do you think about moving?
Hey, I love moving. It's my favorite part of the game. Takes a while when I'm playing Gene Stealer Cult.
Jimmy, is it your favorite part of the game? It does take.
You did beat Frankie.
I enjoy moving.
You did beat Frankie using some movement shenanigans, though, right? At ATC.
Let's not bring that up.
Yeah. Jimmy doesn't want to brag about beating one of the OGs.
Yeah, but I started to phase out at the whole. You have to double line your units because I lament over my front lines of 10 guardsmen having to stand in front now. That's like a little blob in front. It's not going to work very effectively. And then
you were deploying that way anyway. Remember we talked about to prevent the wrapping?
Yeah, but situationally.
You did the triangle deployment. But now,
it really depends on what you're facing. Yeah, if it's trying to wrap you up or if you're trying to keep them from deep striking. It's a lot more effective to keep a bubble.
Like guardsmen, since you're less worried about the wraps now with Desperate Breakout existing, you can just deploy them in like an 8-long screen with 2 models kind of capping the ends.
Yeah.
So that
everybody in the middle is lined up, and then they've got the circles.
You basically go for about 23 inches of screening instead of 28.
Yeah.
Which is basically still means you need 2 squads of guardsmen to cover your front. I don't think it's a bad change for guard, really. Yeah, I think it's fine.
Yeah, efficiency's sake, though, and that's the part that strikes me as weird, is that change. Kind of like we're talking about where it's like, yeah, these guys made it this way so that you couldn't just play a horde and string them as much as you wanted to be able to reach multiple objectives or to bubble like we're talking about. But it seems it had total different game altering effects, where this whole thing of basically turning, essentially turning a group of 20 people into one person on a whim just to avoid a wrap or something like that. Just because you can.
Consider the following. Like, if you want to apply like real world ideas into it, say used to seeing your squad mate next to you, and for whatever reason, because you're out of coherency, you've lost that person. So all those guys that disappear are easily cut down because they have lost their way on the battlefield, and they get away or get shot. With they're not paying attention. I don't know.
Yeah, but also it doesn't take any account into like leadership or anything. So like in this situation, all infantry units are equal. But then at the same time, you end up even in that situation of a straight line, and then you have the circles at the ends. In that situation, there's not a way to remove those units in a way that you won't automatically lose at least one more model to that coherency rule. Because you pull one person off the triangle, and one more person's going to be gone every time. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but that's part of the strategy. Is you're expanding the unit footprint now, accepting the losses later.
I understand the strategy of manipulating the rule. I just don't understand the precedence of the rule. I understand that they want people to zipper, but you do it in any other way, and it's going to have a really strange effect on it. You know what I mean? Like, it's a strange rule.
Yeah, I think they just want you to blob up a blob instead of stringing out a blob.
Just blob up, dummy. For your health.
But one thing, too, for order of operations, and this is like several steps backwards, but so say you do triangle up, and I lose one guy, I have to remove one from the triangle or one from the middle. In either case, I'm going to be losing a bunch of people to that rule. When I say I have one casualty, and I remove him from one tip or one triangle, the guy on the very end is not within range of two people, so he gets pulled. Do I check again? Does the next person have to be within range of two?
Yeah, you have to keep checking until...
So literally, if I do that and I have one injury, say I have 20 guys and I want to string for some reason, I'm going to end up with 3 guys maximum, because it'll crunch him down all the way back to the other triangle.
It stops at 5, but yes, essentially you pull, if you have 20, you pull 15 dudes to get down to 5.
Because one guy died.
If you do that, like if you mess up and are just like, oh, I'm just going to string out. Like, yeah, that's...
Right. And me even talking about it right now is saying, yeah, I'm not going to just do that in a way that... But I mean, it also
hedge cases.
is really dumb rule.
It's different. We'll get used to it.
I think once you play it once or twice, it's quite easy to not have that happen.
Yeah.
Like,
and that's what I'm saying. You can keep track of it very easily. It's just the way that it made you play is just strange. That's all I'm saying. It's just really strange.
Goofy interactions. I get it. I know what you mean.
And there always are.
I can't look at it as an improvement. Like, whether it's a nerf or not, it's just like ham-fisted, I guess is what I describe it as. It's definitely not creative or artful. It's just kind of like, I'm writing rules, boys, which is kind of always how Games Workshop operates. So.
Their intent is clear. Their delivery is ham-fisted. I agree.
Right. And now, Aggie phase.
Yes, Will's favorite phase.
This is my favorite phase. I spend almost all of my time playing the game in this phase, and no other phase.
Absolutely.
The town player.
Yeah. And there's, that joke is funny every time.
Yeah.
This will be a lot faster than the movement phase for
sure.
Reasons. There's a lot. I think there's really only like 2 changes, and one of them was kind of a movement change. So you can't fall back and cast. It's pretty much, other than that, you pretty much just have to cast all of your powers from one Psyker before you do the next Psyker. Like they clarified a couple of things that we kind of assumed from 8th edition, or that were said, but maybe not as clearly. Like if you destroy a Psyker with the perils, you do fail to cast the power. That's, I'm pretty sure, just a direct transplant from 8th. I'm like 99% sure that was rule
It
8
is.
as well.
That was literally the rule, but people messed it up all the time. If they rolled double sixes, they wanted to resolve the power and then roll the damage and blow themselves up.
They might.
But no, if you roll double sixes, you resolve damage first. If you die, the power was not manifested.
Yep. So other big things really is just that the big one, and this is mostly like a simplicity bookkeeping change rather than a balance change. Just that you can't cast 1 power from Ahriman, then cast 2 powers from Magnus, then a Demon Prince, then back to Magnus, then back to Ahriman, and then back to the Demon Prince. If you cast a power with Ahriman casts all of the spells that he wants to, then you pick another Psyker. They cast all the spells they want to, you go down the line.
That is a little bit of a nerf to heavy psychic armies, but overall it's a good change.
Yeah.
For chaos, for chaos specifically, sometimes like your Terminator Sorcerer is in range of smite but out of range of something else, and Ahriman has to cast Warp Time to get that Terminator Sorcerer into range, but you don't want to use Ahriman's powers because he has XYZ and you didn't want to cast those yet. You end up in a scenario where you have to give something up to maximize your psychic phase because you made a mistake in a previous phase. So you just have to be a lot more careful with who you put your psychic powers on, and you have to be more careful about your placement in the movement phase. You have to be thinking ahead a little bit more. And if you are, it's literally no change at all, but you can't self-correct in the psychic phase nearly as easily.
I think that's a very good change, though, because it just became hard to track for the for the very psychic-heavy chaos armies. Like, you'd so often get a situation where it's like, all right, they have Ahriman, 3 Demon Princes, and a Sorcerer. Everyone casts multiple spells, and like they would cast like 10 psychic powers, and then they'd be like, wait, this Demon Prince hasn't cast the second spell, right? And I'd be like, bro, I could not tell you for the life of me. And they're like, well, I don't think he did. I'm going to smite one more time.
No joke. Whenever I came to the Psychic phase and I was playing against Grey Knights or Thousand Suns or Chaos or whatever, they'd start the Psychic phase and I would just tell me when you're done. Tell me when you're done and, what has what, and then we'll move on to the rest of the game. Because I can't keep track of any of that shit. Like, I never could, They
all have very similar names in my experience as well, where it's like, just tell me what it is. Like, +1 what? -1 what? Just...
Don't tell me the name of the power, just tell me what it does.
Now I'm playing Glittering Glory. I'm just like, okay, just fucking tell me what it is.
You don't know the difference between...
Dude.
You don't know the difference between Infernal Gaze and Gaze of Fate? I'm offended.
I definitely don't.
I do know the difference. I do know the difference of those two.
But still, like, it would get to that point, and I think this is just a healthier change, so where you... Like, as a Chaos player, you're less likely to accidentally make a mistake. And as a non-chaos player, you're less likely to get burned for not understanding those specific rules.
Yeah.
So one other change, this is a base change now, like all of us who play match play are used to this, but they did make the core smite go up by 1 every time it's casted for every aspect of the game. So that's not just match play. It's also for, open play, unbound, whatever. Dude,
that's good. If it was the old way, I could literally not play, like, how are you going to be casual, having fun, and it's just like, yeah, I brought 37 smites, and they all go off on 5s, and my entire army gets +1 because I'm Grey Knights. Like, I mean, Grey Knights get that anyway, but you know what I mean.
That's dumb.
I think that, honestly, I think most narrative players, like, use most of the match play restrictions anyway, to be honest.
Right, I'm sure they did, but this is more like anybody who saw, some sort of 40k thing on YouTube and was like, oh, I want to play the game, and just read the rules without reading the FAQs, and, they picked up a starter with their friend, and they picked, Thousand Suns, and their friend picked Necrons or whatever.
They're playing on the kitchen floor around a shoe.
Right, the Necron player isn't getting immediately smote right off the table. No,
Thousand Suns still do, but I probably your point. But yeah,
it's just like
I did the same thing with Grey Knights.
it's a small change, but it's a change that exists, and I figured bring it up.
Yeah,
I think that's the psychic phase, right?
Yeah. I think so. Like, I think the psychic phase might have had the least amount of changes. It's literally just don't fall back and act normal.
However,
which is good.
if you're Titanic and you fall back, you can still cast. That is.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I do really enjoy the fallback changes. And honestly, I'd have to play a few games with it to really understand how much of a difference it's going to make. But that is a huge part of the game because
big part of the day.
yeah, like they've changed a lot of parts of how close combat becomes efficient, and we'll talk about that later in the charge and assault phases and all that. But
Right.
the whole idea of not being able to tri-point things as easily because of the stratagems and that new rule with removing units, like things like that can't be played as easily, but at the same time you have all these restrictions on falling back even with flight and with the psychic phase. Your charges still matter a lot tactically,
Oh yeah.
and I think that is probably the biggest change of the edition, talking about how movement and stuff affects it. That whole fallback mechanic is an overhaul. Like, that's going to change a lot.
Honestly, I think it's going to be
It's
a really
definitely a
good.
big one, and one that I'm very
Everybody don't comment at once.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's true though. Like it's a huge change. I think every army is going to look into having something that moves really fast to just get out there and go touch your opponent's good assets just to force them to fall back or to make them shoot at that specific target, and that leads us into the shooting phase.
Spoilers.
I know.
Nicely done. I'm proud of you, Will.
I'm very good at segueing. One.
You get on that little two-wheel thing and just ride around.
Wish I did.
That's when you know you've made it.
Let's I guess start with just blast.
Yeah.
Well, this is a big one. Actually, no. Let's do the shooting into combat first. So everyone takes the fallback restrictions. Heavy weapons are now -1 to hit for infantry. So like riptides, spikes, drones, Lehman Russ,
Battle suits.
like they're constant weapons.
Or
Pretty
base
much
battle suit.
everything. Anything that's not an infantry can just move and shoot their heavy, no problemo. That's honestly, I think, good. Like it's kind of annoying that like a land raider is, or not that example,
Another
but
land
like
raider.
something like a predator is
Yeah.
like moving and is now like as accurate as a guardsman. That was kind of annoying. So I
Really
definitely
dumb.
understand the change. I think it was good. So buff to vehicles there. Also, vehicles can shoot into combat and monsters as well, but not the other things. It's like a battle suit no longer takes a heavy penalty, but it can't shoot into combat. But a monster, and I believe a riptide is in fact a monster, or a vehicle like a hammerhead, if we're just giving Will all the Tau stuff. All of that can shoot into combat.
Yeah, and I actually have a question to specify that, because I feel like that wording, I've heard it a few times, but I haven't read the specific, like, ruling about it. So, by shooting into combat, it was my impression that the big change to monsters and things were that if they were charged and they were in combat with something, they could still shoot at what was in combat with them. So, by shooting into combat, do we mean, like, say there's a unit of Fire Warriors going against a unit of Gene Stealers, can the Riptide shoot into the Gene Stealers, even though he's not the one tied in? Is it that type of shooting into combat?
No. Yeah, no, it's not. It's with the bullet points, the easiest one here is monsters and vehicles can shoot ranged weapons, even if within engagement range of enemy units. So it's
Okay.
only specifically them.
So they could shoot into their own combat, but they can't shoot into just random comments across the field.
If you wrap some Fire Warriors with Gene Stealers, and you wrap 2 units and only one gets a Desperate Breakout, the other one's wrapped in combat, the rest of the Tau army is not shooting you.
Okay.
If you engage them, then they are shooting you. Like, only the vehicles, though, again, only vehicles.
Only vehicles and monsters.
And then one more question to bounce off of that. Can a monster shoot at a unit that isn't tied up with them, or is that their only valid target in the shooting phase at that point?
Yes, they can, but it's done a specific way. So and if you don't mind, I've got this one. I'm so excited about this this change. So
The Tau
you can
player
shoot
is excited about
the shooting
in combat.
phase.
You can shoot your weapons within engagement range, so you can shoot anything that's around you. However, what you can do when you decide targets for all of your weapons, you can decide to have one of your guns shoot something that's not in engagement range. However, it cannot shoot outside of engagement range unless all the things that are engaging it are dead. So with Riptides, I actually don't think Riptides benefit from this one very well because the weapons that they do choose are usually heavy, so they're going to be hitting on 5s because you do take a -1 to hit penalty when shooting heavy weapons into close combat. And that burst cannon typically is going to want to shoot the things that are around it anyways. But things like Lehman Russes, with what they can do is take 2 heavy flamer sponsons, that heavy bolter on the front, and a storm bolter as a pencil mount, and aim all of that at the dudes that are around it, and then take the big cannon and point it at something across the table and say, if I kill all of this, the thing across the table is going to take these battle cannon shots.
Okay,
And then,
so you just declare it like you normally would, but it becomes a null weapon if you don't
Yes.
kill everything around you.
So if your heavy flamers kill all of the fire warriors touching the Lehman Russ, and you declare the battle cannon at the Riptide that's like 20 inches away, great, you get to shoot it. If there's one fire warrior left within an inch, well, dang. Now everything declared out of combat just doesn't shoot.
Okay.
So like that's good because again, like one guardsman tagging literally like a land raider stops the entire thing from shooting. Now they can take a gamble and like, all right, the las cannons will go at the downfield stuff like the downfield Lehman Russ. But the heavy bullets are like all the little chaff clearing guns that are usually strapped on a tank. That has a lot of purpose now.
yeah, I really like it. It's very thematic, and I like the thematic parts of this game. Give it like Fury, they were at the end when they're fighting all those Germans, guys popping out of the little hatches and stuff, going and shooting people around the tank so that the tank can continue doing what the tank is supposed to do, which is taking out heavy targets.
Make that sound again.
Tanks doing
Yeah. Okay. Anyways, there are other things in the shooting phase that have changed that are really important. Do you want to talk about Blast, or do you want to talk about character targeting?
Let's talk about Blast. Blast is a pretty big one. So first things first, since we were just talking about shooting into combat, Blast weapons cannot shoot into combat. There's a list in the main rulebook. That list has kind of been leaked online of what exactly is a Blast weapon. And it's very simple. You can kind of guess what it was if you played 7th edition. If it was a big, a Blast weapon in 7th, it's probably a Blast weapon now. So just as an example, let's take this classic Lehman Russ we're talking about. The battle cannon is a Blast weapon. Blast weapons are almost always random number shot, like D6, D3 weapons. That's a good clue, but not the auto hit stuff like flamers. So let's say that this Lehman Russ has Blast. It cannot shoot. It can't shoot at the guardsman touching it in combat, or fire warriors touching it in combat. So if you have a Lehman Russ that is just a 1 heavy bolter and a and a battle cannon, if you tag it in combat, it's probably not shooting itself free with the 1 heavy bolter. And then the blast weapon's not shooting, so it'll fall back and then it's just not shooting at all.
Right.
But blast weapons, because again, they're all random number of shots, get buffs against larger units. So if you are shooting, let's say, a battle cannon, heavy D6, against a unit that is 6 or more models, it has a minimum shot of 3. So let's say you roll that battle cannon, you roll a 2, but you're shooting at 10 guardsmen. You now get 3 shots. So on a 1 or a 2, it becomes a 3. If you roll a 4, congratulations, you roll a 4, nothing changed.
Yeah.
So that's all well and good. But if you shoot at an 11-man unit or more, it now becomes maximum shots. Not 6, maximum shots. That's very important. So if they've got a big orc horde, you just shoot that battle cannon at 6 shots. If you're a Lehman Russ, you get to double tap, 12 shots. If you're a Wyvern, heavy 4d6, 24 shots. Maximum shots against 11 plus models.
So, can I ask a question? Because of all the reading that I've done, the one thing that has confused me on Blast specifically is the weapons that have, let's use the Wyvern as an example. It's got the 4d3 shots, right? So if it's shooting at a 6-man unit, does it get 12 shots or does it get 4 shots if you roll all ones?
So rules as written right now, what it says in the book is that you would get 4 shots in that scenario. Because it doesn't change the value of each dice, it changes the value of the shot, of the number of shots total from a weapon. So if you have, what I've been playing is Lehman Russ, which is 1 plasma cannon sponson, 2 plasma cannon sponson, 1 big gun that shoots twice. it's 4 different random number of shot firing sequences. If you have a Wyvern, which is one 4d6 shot sequence, just one sequence, it would get a minimum of 3, which on 4d6 is just literally useless.
Right.
With that said, I have heard strong indications that that is not what Games Workshop meant, and that that will be addressed in a day 1 FAQ.
I've heard the same
So, like,
thing.
right now, if you're playing with it, that's it. But if you choose to believe me, or if you're hearing this after Games Workshop puts out an FAQ, and I'm hoping that they do to clarify this, then supposedly it would be a minimum of 12 shots, where each dice is a minimum of 3. And that's really big for D3 weapons.
Yeah, like
really big for D3 weapons.
The stupid Space Marine fire cannon.
Mhm.
If it shoots
Exactly.
at a 6-man unit, that's 12 shots. Eat it.
Yeah.
That's really
Exactly.
good. I'm waiting for clarification on it too, because I've heard it one way or the other, and I figured,
Yeah. Certainly my understanding is that that will be changed, but rules is written, it's not very useful for multi-shot, multi-dice weapons. But again, that when you target an 11-person unit, it becomes maximum shots, not 6 shots, maximum shots. So it doesn't matter at that point.
One last clarification, and I know that they don't handle it in the bullet points here. If you've got, let's say you've got a unit of 10 guardsmen, and they're shooting at a 30-man orc boy unit, and you pop grenadiers and you throw frag grenades. Frag grenades are now blast, obviously. Is that going to be max shots per guardsman, or do you need to resolve each guardsman one by one until they reach under 10 models?
Technically, you do all your hit wounds and you can do all your hit wounds and all your wound rolls. It's when you target the unit that you check the size.
Okay, that's what I figured.
Same reason, that's when you check range as well. So you don't pull the rest of your grenades out of range. So 10 guardsmen, that grenadier frag grenades did just so happen to get blast. 10 guardsmen with grenadiers strat, it would drop 60 shots.
Oh, buddy.
Dude, some poor guy is going to show up at a tournament after all this blows over with an orc army, and he's just not going to realize what's happening in 9th edition.
Hoping I get that guy around.
Just blow him away with a whole army wiped out by a unit of 10 guardsmen.
Because, you can fall back, tell him get back in the fight, and then grenadiers, and then blow that orc unit away.
Yep.
You can do that, that's the thing.
So, okay, cool.
So very, very, very big changes there for blast weapons. I actually think that blast is a downside on vehicles, but it's just a flat benefit on non-vehicle monsters. So, for example, I would rather my Leman Rush just take the number of shots they roll and shoot into combat.
Oh, yeah. I can understand that. No, you can still take the other different...
I guess.
Take the different heads, you can take the Punisher. The Punisher thrives.
Oh my god, the Punisher Tank Commander is so good in close combat.
Yeah, I know.
I was able to use a Punisher Tank Commander to just decimate. I think I ended up Warp Talons, do 9 damage to me, so I just spent a command point and counted as top tier.
Bro, yeah.
And I just destroyed every Warp Talon touching me. I'm
sent him back to the warp, dude. It was
sent
good.
Him back to the warp.
I liked that.
Warp Talon back to the warp.
So, let's talk about Lookout, sir.
Yeah, let's get to characters. So this is another big change, which kind of made sniping less valuable. You can just naturally get to this point. So it's really, really cool, I think. So previous character stuff, just to clarify, previous character stuff was you can only be targeted if you're the closest, unit. Not even closest visible, just closest. So basically, you're getting not shot ever unless you're literally just standing in front of people or everything else is dead. Now in 9th edition, you have to be within 3 inches of a vehicle, a monster, or a unit that consists of 3 models.
To be within 3 inches of them and
still
away.
And still not be the closest unit.
Right. So you could have dudes standing behind your character at something further up.
So if you have it, so let's take guardsmen as the example here at a company commander. 3 or more guardsmen will provide the second clause, but one guardsman could provide it first. So you could have a company commander standing in front of 10 guardsmen, closer to the enemy than the 10 guardsmen, and then have one guardsman by himself in front of the company commander. He cannot be shot until the guardsman is dead or the 10-man is down to 3-man. If you take the opposite scenario, you have 10 guardsmen in front of the company commander and more than 3 inches in front of him, and then you have one guardsman next to the company commander. There's no longer anything close to him to block for him. He's just getting lit up.
Yeah, he's dead.
So big changes. It means that it's a lot easier to shoot yourself into targeting characters than it was previously. Before you had to kill every single freaking unit in the way first. And late game, maybe. Early game, extremely difficult. But what has happened in a couple of games is, like, I would start, in my command phase, I go, I look around, and I just see, this Farseer is just next to 2 Dire Avenger units that are 5-man each. Okay, I shoot the first Leman Russ, I move to get line of sight, target both Dire Avenger units. I don't kill either of them, but I get them both down to 1- and 2-man units, and then a Leman Russ Demolisher shoots at the Farseer. That's a thing that I did. It was wonderful.
It's a lot easier to kill characters now, and I think it once again moves us closer to that monster vehicle. Obviously, monsters and vehicles are much more improved, and if you have one next to that character's not going to get shot.
Exactly. Yeah. So a Sentinel always blocks. A Leman Russ always blocks. A Riptide always blocks. But for a non-vehicle, non-monster unit, you have to be at least 3 models to provide the character with that cover. So if that makes sense for Jimmy and Dan. So if you have 10 guardsmen in front of a company commander and within 3 inches of him, then I can't shoot him. But if I start shooting those guardsmen and I kill 8 of them and there's 2 left, then I can start shooting that company commander. So, and because that got frustrating, right? We all joked about it, but it had to have come up at least once. You see Golem and Primarch of the frickin' Ultramarines standing in right behind one frickin' guardsman, and an entire Shadow Sword shoots that one guardsman so hard.
So because they can't even declare the guy after you.
True story. My first game of 8th edition, I was running Tyranids with the I forget which Baneblade chassis. It's the one with the Gatling gun.
The Stormlord. You were running.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And I killed not Plague Bearers, Poxwalkers. It was a 20-man unit of Poxwalkers. I killed 19 of them with my other shooting. There was a Demon Prince, 1 Poxwalker. My entire Stormlord had to kill the Poxwalker. And that was my first game of 8th edition. I was like, this is garbage. And fortunately, since that game, it never really came up for me like that again. I mean, I abused character rule after that too. So I did that to people. I didn't really have it done to me because I used psychic powers instead of shooting for most of 8th edition. But my very first game of 8th edition, and I still remember that crap because I thought it was so stupid. So I'm glad that they adjusted it, but didn't just remove that rule completely, because it's a very useful rule. So I am glad that they just adjusted it and made it to where it doesn't feel as bad.
Yeah, they've removed a lot of the gamey feel bads from 8th edition in this transition to 9th. A lot of small mechanical changes, but all of them are, this was kind of stupid, and we all acknowledged it while we did it. All of those changes happened, and that's overall a very good thing. But also a character in the middle of nowhere is no longer being blocked for. So
oh no,
that's the other thing is okay, I get it. If there's a company commander mixed in with the guardsman, I'm not killing that guy first. Fine. But what if there's a Genestealer Cult Sanctus sitting on an objective, and there isn't a single person within 12 inches of him? Why can't my Basilisk shoot that guy? Now he can. You have to be within 3 inches of a blocking unit, so a 3-man guardsman squad, or a 3-man anything squad, or a vehicle or a monster.
Yeah, one other point of clarification there. So you say they have to be within 3 inches of a blocking unit, and it has to be at least 3 models in that unit that are blocking. 3 models don't... Monster. Okay. For an infantry unit, they don't have to be within... 3 models don't have to be within 3 inches. You could just have a toe of a 10-man unit be between, and it's fine.
Correct.
Okay.
So the company commander could be within 3 inches of one model of a 10-man unit, and he's covered.
Okay.
For example. So it's another good change. So it just means that you're not going to have characters that are specifically designed to just sit in the backfield and do nothing unless you stay with them. So like Gene Circle used that a lot. The Nexus, the Sanctus. You're just going to need to leave a 10-man Brood Brother squad back with them. Otherwise, artillery becomes a very efficient sniper.
Yeah, ironically enough.
Because if you just so like a Basilisk is actually a good character killer at that point. Which is funny because it's not good at literally anything else in the world. But you know what? It's pretty good at that.
Yeah. Your character can't be out in the field picking daisies unattended.
Yeah.
But everything else,
I'm fine with that.
Everything else in the shooting phase is more or less unchanged, other than those big three things. Rapid fire still works the same as it does. Assault weapons work the same as they do. Heavy weapons obviously have that infantry clause change. You can still only shoot pistols or other things. And grenades are only 1 per unless you can get around that rule, right? Okay.
Yeah. That's correct. I think pretty much everything else stayed the same, specific to shooting. There are a couple of changes that hit both shooting and charge. If you want to launch into those now,
I would love to charge straight through the shooting phase into the charging phase.
Yeah.
Ooh.
All right, guys. We've been going at it, and we got a lot more to talk about. So we're going to actually do a 2-part episode. So this is going to be the end of Part 1, and you'll be able to find Part 2 pretty soon after this on your normal podcasting apps and YouTube. So drop us a like, subscribe, and check us out on the next episode.